Welcome to Investors Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Faye D'Souza. Over the last 320 episodes, we've been helping you manage your money better and better. And the good news is we're now getting questions from younger and younger investors who are starting early. So that makes us really, really happy. But if you're watching at home and you haven't started invested yet, well, don't worry. It's always a good time to start. Today is as good a time as any. If you need advice, you can reach us. Email ID is at the bottom of your screen, or you can reach me personally on Twitter. On the show this week, we'll help a 25-year-old investor who's just about to start working next month plan from the beginning, from the time he gets his first salary. In our product review this week, we look at the Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund, and we'll tell other young investors how to save enough to buy a home. It's time for me to introduce Kumar, the CEO of Value Research. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
you. Our first question, and this makes me so happy, is from a very, very young investor, but he's also a very nervous investor, and that seems to be the case across the board. We've got questions today from really young people. So either there's a young person watching right now for whom this advice will apply, or maybe it's a parent watching who will write it down and hand it over to someone who's just started working. But if you were to put down bullet points right now, for the first salary that's going to join this year, what would it be? What are the fundamentals or the philosophy for money they should keep in mind?
Keep it simple as possible. I think, 2-3 things which comes to my mind is, first, have a definite savings plan. Take it out of your bank account so that it's not accessible anytime. And that can be an investment. Either it goes into a recurring deposit. If you are in a small town where you don't have access to anything, then might as well, just put your money in the recurring deposit. It gets out of your, ambit of savings bank account, which is accessible. Else, I would say that if you can plan it better, you understand what you're getting into, then your first step should be to, get started with your tax saving or the money which you invest, which can save you tax. That is money earned. So avail your ATC entitlement. If you're going to be a taxpayer, then invest as much as possible, which will get you the tax break. And for that, get started with your tax saving fund from day one. Don't wait for your, March 31st or, your accountant telling you that you will have, this much of tax will be deducted if you don't save.
For all the young people who are watching who are going to start working this year, here's the advice. Get into the habit of saving. Use a recurring deposit or the SIP of a mutual fund just to take money out of your bank account every month when it hits. So you're putting some money aside. And of course, they're saying that tax saving is the most important thing. Even from day one, try and save as many tax as you can, as much tax as you can, and of course put money aside to save tax. If you can do these two things, you'll be set for life. In fact, we have one such investor who's written in. 25-year-old Kumar has written in. He's unmarried. He tells us his parents depend on him. He is going to start working in August, and he wants to make plans for that first salary. 1.25 lakh rupees is what he's going to be making every month. We're so proud of him for getting that good job. He has a couple of things in mind. He wants to put aside 30 lakh rupees for a higher education degree, maybe the next 3 to 5 years. He wants to buy a car in 3 years, wants to buy a home in 10 years. That sounds like a young man who's just about to start working. And of course, he has the EPF deduction. Now, he's telling us after everything, he'd like to put some money aside in mutual funds. And he has several options. His questions are, should I be looking at doing a PF, even though he has EPF? Should he be looking at any sort of guaranteed products? Now, assuming he already takes the advice that you're giving him, which is start investing and planning early, also maximize your tax saving with the tax saving fund, and we'll put those funds on the list. These are funds that Dhirendra recommends. Does he need PF for a guaranteed return product at his age?
No, definitely not. He can do without the PPFs. His employee provident fund deduction will be the fixed income investment. In fact, I would urge somebody like him that, in the last year's budget, the finance minister enabled a provision which has not been implemented yet, that savers like him or employees like him getting into the organized sector will have the option of, choosing NPS instead of EPF. And as and when it becomes possible, I think somebody like him should be going for NPS. That might translate into superior performing investment choice. That apart, you don't need any guaranteed return plans. Keep it very simple and straightforward. Have pure products for your insurance need. As your parents are dependent, you might require a reasonable insurance. Just do a very liberal estimation of, just in case you're not around, how much money is needed to financially take care of your parents. And after that, estimate this and go for a term plan for that. You need a health cover too for your parents, so a family floater plan might do well, or choose an appropriate one and take advice for the most appropriate thing, because it will be a little complicated.
Kumar, you seem to be on the right track, but our advice to you would be to relax a little bit. It's your first salary. Don't put so much stress on yourself. You're doing really well. So like Dhirendra said, and I want to break this down, it's really simple. It's our advice to anybody who's watching. You have to have an emergency fund of money that you can use for 3 months in case your salary doesn't come in. You have to have health insurance. You have to have life insurance. Once you do these 3 things, the next most important thing for you, working on a salary, a young man like yourself, is to make sure that you save on tax. I'll put up that list one more time. These are the tax-saving mutual funds that we have recommended on this show. Any one of these funds will do the trick for you. Now, once you have done all of that, you are far ahead than most 30-year-olds in your place. Dhirendra, could you recommend one of our portfolios that would ideally suit Kumar's needs? Is our aggressive portfolio the way that a young man should go?
Yes, aggressive portfolio given his time frame. But I would say that, he can go for a growth portfolio, a stable growth portfolio as well, because though he looks young, but he might need the money in 5 years' time, 6 years' time, 7 years' time, depending on when he plans to go for his education and when he needs to take money out of his investments to make the down payment for his house or buy the car. So he's not necessarily a long-term investor, though he might have time on his side.
All right, here's another little trick I'm going to give you, Kumar, when you start making your investments. You should never take a loan on something that doesn't appreciate. So your car, for example, will not appreciate, which is what Dhirendra is telling you, that you should save the money and buy the car instead of taking a car loan. A home, on the other hand, is an appreciating asset, and you yourself are an appreciating asset. So if you are going to study at some point to make yourself better, which is an investment you're making in yourself, which will give you a higher salary in the future, then it's okay to take a loan for that as well. Also remember, home loans and education loans give you tax benefits, and we love tax benefits. So don't take a loan to buy a car. And that's the advice you're getting right now. Our stable growth portfolio is on your screen. If you need any more hand-holding, we're right here. We'll see you through the next 10 years of investments, and it'll be our pleasure to help you. Let's take another very quick question with Dhirendra. This question comes in from an NRI. Rana Babu has written in from Canada, Dhirendra. He has an NRA fixed deposit. He tells us it's giving him 8.5% tax-free. He wants you to suggest some good mutual funds which will give him even better returns than that. I'm hoping Rana Babu can stay invested for the long term. If he does, would you recommend maybe an equity diversified fund that he can invest in, or do you think that he should go slightly more aggressive than that?
There is one thing he should be careful about. One is that, the return that you derive from equity has to be in the form of appreciation only. So he will not have periodic payout, as he will be getting his, periodic interest payment on his fixed deposit. So all his money will accumulate into larger asset base. But it may not be possible to, and also for an NRI, taking the money in the form of a dividend is disadvantageous because there is an applicable TDS, and I don't know how cumbersome it is to, take a refund of that TDS, that withholding tax deducted at source. So he has to, and when investing in any of the, say conservatively in our stable growth portfolio or in 1 or 2 balanced fund, I'm confident that he is likely to get at least, reasonably more than what he is getting in his fixed deposit. At the same time, it will be undesirable to make a lump sum investment the way you make a deposit. So even if he has the lump sum amount, it should be spread over some period of time. Maybe, if you're making your investments with a 10-year time frame, then maybe any time between 1 to 1.5 years.
Rana, this is the advice you're getting. Doing more than 9.5% is no problem at all for an Indian mutual fund, provided you're willing to stay invested for the long term. Dhirendra is saying at least 10 years. And of course, you can't take the money out. So you can't take out your dividend or your return. You're going to have to let it compound over 10 years. And if you do that, there'll be no problem at all. Also, it's tax-free after a year, so it's all working in your favor. On your screen right now are the stable growth portfolio, the balanced funds that we normally recommend on this show that Dhirendra says will serve you well. Good luck with those investments. Moving on, before we go into break, you know we have a segment called Beginner's Guide where we help you manage your money, encouraging you more to do things online which give you some sort of convenience in buying and, of course, investing your money. This week, we're going to tell you what you can do on your phone, how you can use personal finance apps to manage your money. Krishna Kumar, as always, is standing by to give us some suggestions. Krishna.
Thank you, Faye. A prerequisite for smart investing is making sure that you have enough money in the first place. Nothing feels better than having complete control of your expenses and keeping your personal budgets in check. Here are some apps that can help you do just that. You can get started with one of the most popular apps around and one that is available across all platforms, the Social Budget Finance and Expenses app. It's basically meant to manage and track expenses and organize budgets on a daily basis. Expenses can be classified and tagged. You can even set a budget for each expense head and track when you spend beyond the budget in different time periods. Recurring expenses can be set up and automated to save time and effort in updating. It is also possible to set up bill reminders and due dates. Considering the app pictorially represents your spending patterns, it is a lot of fun to use. Another very useful app is Pocket Expense. Pocket Expense focuses on tracking your spending, giving you a visual outlook on your spending before creating budgets rather than the other way around. Now, it doesn't sync with your bank account, so you manually enter all transactions, making the app ideal if you're concerned about linking accounts. Pocket Expense color codes numbers in green as in how much you have or a credit, or red as in your debts and expenses. Now, to get a breakdown of how much you spend versus how much you've combined, go to the calendar tab and take a look at the expenses per day, week or month, all color coded. Then set up a budget under the budgets tab and check out charts for your spending breakdown. One app that is an absolute must-have is the app of the bank where you have an account in. Bank apps allow you to do nearly all your regular basic bank work on your mobile phone. You don't even need a personal computer. From checking your account balance to bill payments to even opening fixed deposits, your app becomes your bank at your convenience. Now, who wouldn't want that? There's a whole host of personal finance apps available and many of them are for free. So just download one that suits you and get cracking. With that, it's back to you, Faye, in the studio.
All right, Krishna, thank you for that very quick class. Dhirendra is going to stay with us. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund that you're holding right now. We'll tell you if you should continue to hold it. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Investor's Guide on ET Now. Thank you for staying with us. Now it's time for our product review, and this week we look at the Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund. It's a big fund and a lot of you have it in your portfolio. Avan will give us a quick track of the investment returns over the last 1 year, and then we'll come back and talk about whether or not you should continue to hold this fund. Avan.
Thanks, Faye. We take a look at the Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund this week. With a clear focus on large cap stocks and a good long-term track record to its credit, this fund is not only a new name for our viewers on the show. So let's take a closer look at its performance over the last 5 years. You'll notice that the red line, which is the fund, has consistently outperformed its benchmark, the BSE 200. You'll also see that the fund has fared better than its benchmark and its category in a market downturn. Over the last 1 year, however, the fund's performance has declined by a margin. The fund may be way ahead of its benchmark with an average return of 26%, but it underperformed its category in 2014, thereby lagging behind its peers. The fund that was once a top performer has raised some concern over its recent performance slipping in its ranking. However, the fund has had a stable management and a successful investment approach over the long term. Barring the last 1 year, the fund has delivered stellar returns since its launch in 2002. Is it the fund's recent performance that's a cause of worry? Should you stay invested in this fund? Let's find out. With that, it's back to you, Faye.
All right, Avan, thank you for that quick update. The Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity is invariably in a lot of portfolios that our viewers hold. You've recommended this fund year after year. Does it continue to hold your attention? Is it still a good, solid fund? Should we continue to just hold it?
On many occasions, this fund has been disappointing on a brief period of time, even on a, 1.5 year, 2 year. it has not necessarily been the best performing fund relative to other similar funds. But I've still, believed that this particular method followed by the fund is the trick to it. It remains an impressive fund, and here is a fund, which has always been, since its start, it started differently. It started as an alliance fund, but now, but it still continues to get managed in the same way. So I would say that this is a fund where the large asset base has not hampered its performance, or it has not been an impediment. It is an impressive fund. One should carry on with this.
All right, it's a great fund and you should carry on with this. Dhirendra, would you give us your rating for Investor's Guide for the Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund?
It is slotted as a 4-star fund, but given that, the aging of the fund and remaining and it being, relatively superior performer over consistently, I'm inclined to give it, I'll be inclined to give it a 5-star.
Well, 5 stars is not easy to get on this show, I'll tell you that. 5 stars for the Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund. Dhirendra saying if you're holding it in your portfolio, continue to hold it. If it's not in your portfolio, it makes for a good addition. If you have questions about that fund, feel free to write to us. Email ID is at the bottom of your screen. Dhirendra, we have one very interesting question from you, from a very interesting person. DJ Rao has written in. I wonder if he's DJ by initial or DJ by profession. But everybody needs money management. He tells us he invested 20 lakh rupees in equity diversified mutual funds and did really well. He now wants to know if there are any mutual funds whose portfolios predominantly comprise of capital goods companies and if you should be investing in those funds. Now, first of all, here's someone who's invested in equity diversified and has done well and he's happy. But for some reason, he wants to focus on a thematic fund, a sectoral fund, and it's not really also about the call on whether or not capital goods are going to do well in the country. It's just about not picking a sectoral fund, isn't it, Dhirendra?
When you're investing in equity, your goal should be very straightforward. Either you choose a great company and you choose a collection of great companies so that you are able to diversify your risk. You spread your investments over a period of time so that you eliminate the possibility of catching an offbeat market high, And once you do these two things, and if you can't choose great companies to invest for the long term, you choose a fund manager who will do this job for you. But even the fund manager has to ensure that he is diversified on most occasions. And the spread of your investment, you being able to average your investments over time, that is in investor's hand. And that is where you eliminate all your anxiety. And by spreading your risk, by diversifying your portfolio, you eliminate the other part of risk of going wrong with a specific company. And that is exactly what you should not be doing.
In fact, Dhirendra, there's another portion of this question that I find interesting. The fact that he is asking, please name a capital goods, mutual fund that I can invest in for the next 3 years. Now, even if he was going to do equity diversified funds, 3 years is not a long enough time, especially, of course, if he's going to do a sectoral fund. Would you recommend that he sort of not do either if he's only got 3 years on hand?
If you have only 3 years, then I don't think equity is for you. In fact, if you just have your 3 years and you have accumulated all your savings in equity, then it's about time to do an estimation of how much money you need after 3 years. And methodically start exiting equity. And you don't have to wait for the last moment.
So, DJ, like we keep saying on this show, you need to have at least 5 years, on hand if you're going to invest in equity, ideally 10. And also you need to have a target that you can push a little if need be. As you approach your target in your goal, you have to move more and more money out of equity into fixed income. So the money you've accumulated, 20 lakh rupees in equity diversified funds, is doing really well for you. If you have incremental funds to invest, you should just continue to rely on the funds that are serving you well. Dhirendra, thank you so much for joining us on the show and answering all of those questions. You know how you can reach Dhirendra. He's on Twitter as well. I'm on Twitter. You can reach us personally if you would like to. But stay with us. Coming up after the break, Vishal joins us from Standard Chartered. We talk to more young investors and help them save enough to buy a home. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Investor's Guide on ET now. We brought in Vishal Kapoor from Standard Chartered. It's such a pleasure to have Vishal on the show. Vishal, thank you for joining us. We've missed you when you've been busy, but I'm glad to have you back because we have a lot of questions for you to answer. 32-year-old Mohammadi Vora has written in. He became a dad 2 months ago. Well, congratulations. He says, as a first-time investor, he wants to put aside 20 lakh rupees in mutual funds for his daughter's future and for her education. He's looking at a time horizon of 15 to 20 years. He wants you to recommend a couple of mutual funds that help him achieve his goals. So 20 lakh rupees is a great target to have. Where would you like him to invest the money, Vishal? What advice do you have for a new dad?
Mr. Vora, first of all, heartiest congratulations on becoming a father. The good news is that you've already saved up 20 lakh rupees, and the better news is that you are trying to build up coppers for your daughter's education. Now, we don't know enough about your specific risk appetite, but because you want to invest in funds and we can get you started with equity funds given the time horizon is 20 years, you could look at a mix of large cap and mid cap funds that can provide you this growth. Among large cap funds, you could look at the Franklin Prima Plus, you could look at Kotak Select Focus, and you could look at the Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity. And for the mid cap, you could look at the UTI Mid Cap Fund.
Next question comes in from another very young investor. Debashish Panja has written in. He's 26 years old. He tells us he's been investing in PPF. Now, I don't always recommend that. He'd like to buy a home in the next 3 or 4 years for about 40 lakh rupees. Let me see, that would mean a down payment of at least 8 lakh rupees and an EMI of between 35 and 40,000 rupees a month. Now, let's look at his financial details. He has 50,000 rupees in salary, health insurance cover, life insurance from LIC. I don't recommend that either. He has no other investments. Vishal, with a target that big, is he going to be able to achieve his goal in 4 years? Is he going to have to perhaps step back and relook at all of it? I would recommend he stops the PPF or just put in enough to keep it running and move that investment to something slightly more productive. What would you recommend he does?
Mr. Panja, for the goal that you've set for yourself, which is to buy a house worth about 40 to 50 lakhs in 3 to 4 years, the savings requirement will be on the back of the envelope calculation, almost 50 to 60,000 rupees per month, even if it compounds at 15% on a compounded basis, right? Now, that so far looks very similar to the income that you have, but we must consider the fact that your income is going to grow from here. So what you could do is, to start with, is as much of your savings as possible that you can put towards this goal. You should start doing that even just today. And you could choose a growth-oriented portfolio of funds, maybe as a starting point, to put this money into. Now, the other thing I notice is that you've got a health insurance cover, but your life insurance cover, may or may not be adequate. That's not something that is known to us at this time. But that's another thing you must consider. Just make sure that your life cover is also adequate for the premium that you're paying. And if not, then the part of that premium could actually be used for a growth-oriented asset that helps you get to the goal of buying a house after 3 to 4 years.
Last question comes in from Gaurav Singhal. Now, he wants to build a corpus for his daughter's education over the next 10 years. He's currently investing 12,000 rupees a month in 4 mutual funds. He wants us to take a look at that fund list. Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity, we talked about it earlier on the show. It's a great go. HDFC Balanced, iPro Dynamic, UTI Opportunities. Those are all great funds, really. He wants to add another investment of 3,000 rupees. What would you recommend he does? Should he be looking at the PPF or the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana or an equity fund? Vishal?
That program, the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, is a good product, has returned some very stable returns. Currently, I believe it's almost 9% plus, but it's a fixed income oriented return for you. So if your profile is a bit more balanced, then I would think then additional investments could be made towards that scheme. Also because you've already got a fair amount of equity exposure in mutual funds and large cap funds. However, if you can afford to take the risk, and certainly if your investment horizon is 10 years, you could look at diversifying with a mid-cap oriented fund like the UTI Mid-Cap Fund for the additional 3,000 rupees that you now want to add.
Vishal, like I said, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. If you have a question for Vishal Kapoor, write to us. Email ID is on your screen. It would be an absolute pleasure for me to hear from you personally as well. You know you can reach me on Twitter. Thank you so much for watching.